On this episode of the show, I have with me Teddy Solomon. He is co-founder and CEO at Fizz, and we're going to be talking about leadership and specifically Gen Z leadership. We're going to talk to Teddy a little bit about his path into becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a co-founder. So he's going to walk us through some of that and some of those decisions and learning leadership on the fly. And obviously, as a Gen Z age person, he has some leadership attributes that are unique to him, and he's going to tell us why there's some misconceptions around Gen Z, and he's had to lead people that are more experienced with it than he is most of his life, and we're going to ask him about that and see what else we can fit in here, but hopefully we have enough time for all that. Teddy, thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me, Amir. Good to be here.
Absolutely. All right. Tell us all what Fizz does before we start.
Sure. So Fizz is the Gen Z social platform that is used to basically connect with the experiences that you share with other people and shared identities with other people. What that's meant since the start of the company is it's become the biggest college social platform in the US, a place where people verify with their .edu email, and once they're in, you can connect with people who share that common experience with you. You can post images, polls, memes, GIFs, links, DM people, the whole nine yards, all to a space that is private to your school experience. We're used by 95% of students at Stanford, Dartmouth, Yale, Tulane, Duke, Vanderbilt, you name it, around the country. And it's become really the one-stop shop for everything from parties and events to classes to memes and jokes to buying and selling and everything in between.
Very interesting. It's as though I've seen this play out before. I'm just kidding. I think it's actually a really interesting idea because I think what starts at that college level ends up exploding, and we never kind of see the fruition of the impact at a particular niche. So this is a really interesting idea, and I think it's obviously a fantastic product. Let's actually start back a little bit, because I know we could probably spend a lot of time talking about Fizz, and I think we could probably do a whole episode around what you're seeing in terms of impact. But in this case, we're going to talk about you and your leadership and a little bit about your journey. I guess if you were to take us back, and for anyone who's not been able to, see Teddy's background, he's got a fantastic background. He did go to Stanford, and we're going to start there. We're going to start with you going to Stanford and deciding to not continue. And I guess a lot of people would go, well, that's a great place to be. Lots of entrepreneurs come from there. You decide to leave. What was the reason behind it not working for you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll even back up a little bit further on what led up to Stanford and why we took the path that we did. So I grew up in San Francisco. I'm a Bay Area guy. And growing up, I was super interested in two things. One of them was college basketball journalism, which since the age of 3, I thought that was my path. I was completely ready to go do that for the rest of my life. I also played table tennis competitively. So I played in the Olympic trials in 2020. I trained for about a decade. I spent a lot of my time doing that. But when time came to go to college, I was like, well, I want to be a college basketball journalist. It doesn't particularly matter where I go, but I want to go to an interesting college environment that has sports and great academics and really interesting people. I think people are interesting in general, so I always want to hear their stories. And I decided to go to Stanford. I decided to stay in the Bay Area. But this happened in the middle of the pandemic because I was a senior in high school back in 2020 when COVID actually hit. So the pandemic hits and Stanford basically goes, you can't come to campus for your freshman year. And like me wanting to go to college, I'm like, that's not ideal. So I get onto a Zoom call with about 100 people who were all trying to move to the Bay Area and live in like houses, kind of like close to Stanford so they could get like some semblance of the Stanford experience. But I thought to myself, I'm like, why would I live in the Bay Area when it's super expensive and we can't actually go to campus? There's no good reason to do that. So I got put into a breakout room with a guy named Ashton. He was in Columbus, Ohio. I was in San Francisco. And I said, Ashton, I've got this vision of us moving to Scottsdale, Arizona, where we can have 25 people move with us. We rent out a bunch of houses and we go and we live out our college experience just for much cheaper than the Bay Area would have been because we couldn't afford to pay for the Bay Area. Like I was not going to pay $2,000 a month to pay rent in the Bay Area. So that's what we did. We convinced 25 people. We moved to Arizona. It was way cheaper than it would have been in the Bay. It was an amazing time going out there. And when we got there, we quickly realized that everybody was on, Instagram, where you post highlight reels. It's an entertainment platform. You post a 1% of your life. There was this 1,200 person group chat for the Stanford class of 24, but nobody would speak. It would just be like 3 people because everybody else was scared about having your name attached and not saying the perfect thing as somebody who's grown up natively on social media. So we said there's got to be some better way. So that's what led to us building Fizz really initially as a side project, saying we're going to create this closed community where we can actually know what's going on at our school, where we can democratize information, where we can have a place to authentically connect with other people. And we spent our freshman year jumping around the country. We lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. Then 20 of us went to Nashville. We were in Florida. We were in Michigan in a basement. It was a wild time that whole year. And we actually got to campus in summer of 2021. Mind you, I still wanted to be a college basketball journalist. I had no interest in starting a company. I knew nothing about starting a company. Yes, I went to Stanford, which is like the epitome of like jumping into the startup or tech world, but that wasn't what I was planning on doing. But one day at 6 a.m., I call up all my friends. I'm like, I need you to open the door to your dorm. And they're like, what? I'm like, just trust me. And then I call up a bunch of my other friends. I'm like, I need you guys to help me drop flyers under people's doors for this app that me and Ashton have been working on for a little while now. And my friends were amazing there, amazing people at Stanford, first off, like some of the most incredible people I've ever met. And they went and they helped me just throw flyers under people's doors. In like 20 minutes, we had every single door on campus covered, which was pretty epic. And there were about 1,000 people on campus that summer in 2021. And we had most of campus on by dinner time. And we were like, oh my God, this app is blowing up. But that didn't particularly mean anything to us in the moment from the standpoint of like building a company. We were just like, this is amazing. We have helped the Stanford community do something cool. Then the next day, like every VC in America was emailing us. And we had no clue what that meant because we didn't know what VCs were. And we were not trying to raise money. And we were not trying to build a startup. We took $0 that summer. We come back in fall of 2021. The app continues to blow up to the point where within like a week of getting back, we have 95% of the campus onto the app. And they're all using it for everything from where the party's at to what's being served at the dining hall to which classes should I be taking to this is what's happening right here, right now on campus and everything in between. And I end up at a frat party in October of 2021, finally getting back to the point of what led to me dropping out. And I meet a girl who texts me at 3 a.m. and she goes, you need to meet my dad. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's really interested in what you guys are doing. And at this point, everybody at Stanford was using Fizz. And fortunately, they still are to this day. And we went and we met this girl's dad the next day. Me and Ashton did. And he basically said to us, look, I will put $750K into the company and come on as your guys' CEO. But you guys need to drop out of Stanford tomorrow. So Ashton and I, we went and we dropped out of Stanford. And we thought, let's go give it a shot. We believe in the app that we're building. We never wanted to build a company per se, but we believe in our market. We believe in our product. I had always been like the kind of person to just go ask a random person their story and go like pull up to college campuses and do college basketball stuff. I skipped a bunch of my classes in high school, went and did college basketball media stuff because that's what I love to do. So I'm like, we're going to give it a shot. And we never ended up going back. So that's how it all played out. Very accidental. Nothing against Stanford. Stanford was an incredible place. The greatest experience of my life, both before and after I dropped out, because I made all of my best friends there. And the administration is pretty amazing. And they've worked really hard to keep Ashton and I integrated. They let us walk at graduation. They let us go to all the senior events. So it was a cool experience all around, but dropping out ended up being the right move.
That's a heck of a story. And you know what? I was listening and you were mentioning how you got lucky, and I listened and I go, well, you never know where opportunity comes from, but you definitely put yourself in the positions to receive opportunities and execute on them, and actually to take the next steps, which is really all cool. Can you tell, is this person that ended up finding you, did that person stay with you guys along the investment ride? Was it just one of those, he was the right person, right time, or is he still part of kind of what you've been doing in the last couple of years?
Yeah, he's like my best friend, man. He's like a mentor to me. Rakesh, he came on and was CEO at the beginning of the company. I ended up taking over somewhere along the way as CEO. He continues to be one of my closest mentors and somebody who's taught me a lot up to this point in time and how I lead and how we operate the company. And he invested in our seed round. He lived up to everything he said he was going to do. Everybody always says, don't bring on an external CEO. Don't believe the promises that investors might make, et cetera, et cetera. But we were 19 years old. We didn't know how to build a company. We saw a guy who we believed was genuine, knew a lot about building companies, exiting companies, actually growing teams and all of that. We're going to give him a shot and see if it works, because my mindset always is like, most startups are going to go to zero. How can we be the one that doesn't? And let's do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen. So bringing on Rakesh was the best decision we ever made. And now I'm lucky to be CEO right now and be leading the charge, and having learned a lot in the past many years now that I'm 23. So very different age from when we dropped out of school.
That's a great story. I love it. And, also just having the self-realization to let somebody else come in to run the business because you might have felt that was the right move at the time. That's interesting, and that's really powerful, because sometimes people early on feel like, they do get guarded with wanting to control that position. They want to be the person, they're the co-founder, they don't want someone external. So having someone come in and temporarily help guide the ship, navigate the ship, that's a great outlook. I guess you covered a lot of ground in terms of talking to us about how you got to this point, which I think is an interesting story in of itself. And we were going to touch on some of the leadership component, right? So obviously you guys brought somebody in to help manage some of the company. From a leadership perspective, you obviously have very entrepreneurial instincts. I mean, sounds like in high school, you still knew what you wanted to do. Maybe it's not entrepreneurship, but you were definitely wanting to branch into things that didn't necessarily require you to go through a bunch of work and experience to build a portfolio. When it comes to leadership, how have you learned? What have you seen? What have you done to I guess now you've taken over as CEO, but in terms of those in-between steps of taking over for the previous person, Rakesh, and taking over that role, is it been trial by fire? Have you been watching him as your mentor, picking up what he's been doing? How have you kind of helped yourself get to that role?
Yeah, I mean, since we dropped out of school, I've been surrounding myself with people who I can learn something from. Whether that's Rakesh, whether it's our mentors, advisors, investors, there are lots of people around the table who have tons and tons of operating experience, who I've been able to learn from and just pick up on lessons from over the years. You also just learn by doing. So when you're actually in the process of building a company, you learn a lot each and every day. And some days are like the worst days of your life, and some days are the best days of your life. And in the process, you learn how you're supposed to react in those situations, and you make mistakes, and you keep pushing forward, trying to be the best leader that you can possibly be. And the big lesson that I've learned over the course of the past 4 years, and that I learned as kind of preparing to eventually become CEO, and I wasn't really, it might be the wrong way to say it, because I wasn't trying to become CEO. I never really cared. All I cared about was building a great company, and having a really amazing team of people, and a product that impacts millions of people, and a product that actually has a fundamental impact on people's lives. And that's what we were able to build, and we continue to build. But from a leadership standpoint, what I always say nowadays is you need to stay high with the lows and low with the highs. I tell that to every single person on our team. I tell that to anybody outside of the company that I talk to, because a lot of founders, and a big reason why companies go and they crash and burn, is because in the worst moments, they don't perform. They operate at their worst in the worst moments. And if that is the case, you are in serious trouble. When your company is in a really bad situation, you need to perform at your best, and you need to stay calm. Being paranoid is good. You should always be paranoid. And I think a great book for people to read is Only the Paranoid Survive. But you should always be paranoid. But you can't freak out, because at the end of the day, it's likely that your startup is going to zero. How do you make sure that doesn't happen? Well, in the worst moments, you perform at your best. And in the best moments, you don't get too arrogant. You don't get too high on yourself. You don't go and spend all of the money that you have in the bank. You operate in this balanced capacity. If you're high with the lows and you're low with the highs, you're going to be able to execute really well. So to our team, it's like, well, we're in the best position we've ever been in right now. We have the majority of our Series B still in the bank over 2 years later. We're on a clear path to profitability. We are getting ready to expand beyond college. We are definitively the college app that people use, and we're seeing an insane amount of growth with a really lean team. what I tell them always is like, that can reverse at any time. So all that we need to do is keep executing. We should never have any sense of like arrogance when it comes to how we talk to other people or how we talk to each other in the office here. We can't get complacent because it's going to be a challenge to continue to grow and continue to scale and build a company that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, go build a giant company. So you got to stay balanced and composed, and you got to care more about the company than yourself. And in learning those lessons along the way, it makes our team really strong. And our team is pretty amazing. And we're in a really good spot with a good mentality right now.
Absolutely. I guess a question for you, and I think I asked this question to somebody else who's a younger entrepreneur. He had dropped out at MIT to pursue his company, and I guess a lot of times you're going to be put in positions of leading people with just more work experience, right? You're going to walk into the room and you might be the youngest person in the room. I guess that dynamic, in those particular situations, have you seen anything? Has it been positive? Has it been negative? Has it been uneventful? Because sometimes I feel like, unfortunately, people have preconceived notions of stereotypes. But I was just kind of curious if you'd seen anything, or it's been pretty even for you.
Yeah, I'd say for better or worse, I've definitely been treated like differently as somebody who's younger since dropping out of school, especially when I was 19. Now that I'm 23, that dynamic changes a little bit, but still younger than most of the people kind of in the world that I exist in here. The dynamic is different for sure. But when people come onto our team, they have a lot of respect for everybody here, meaning respect for me, respect for Ashton, and respect for the people that they work with. And that translates across the lines of like age and experience, but also along the lines of like where somebody went to school. My mindset has always been like, it really doesn't matter that I went to Stanford or that somebody else went to Harvard or Yale or whatever it might be. Like, results matter. And what I tell our team all the time is like, I care about two things here. I care about the culture that we have as a company, and then I care about the outcomes. And nothing else actually really matters to me. What I mean by the culture is that everybody has a positive energy. Everybody is uplifting to other people. Everybody values the sense that people have work-life balance and they're able to go live their life and also produce at work and go and do what they're going to do here, that people are collaborative with one another. We are 5 days a week in the office together, which is a little bit abnormal, but something that I think is really important. And that's the culture end of things. People have to help to facilitate the culture that we are trying to build as a company. And then there's the outcome side of things, which is how are we actually producing results? You can say a lot, and like people at like elite colleges are really good at talking and they're really good at convincing people they're doing things, but you actually have to do. And once you go get results and outcomes in the work that you're doing, it doesn't really matter what you said up to that point. I want to see that we're getting results. So we have a great culture and a culture that we're proud of. And if we're seeing results and growth, there's nothing to be upset about. We're in a good spot at that point. So that's what I really care about. Doesn't matter where people went to school. Doesn't matter how much experience they have. Doesn't matter how old they are or young they are. We just want to have great people who help us build our culture and help us grow.
Absolutely. I like that a lot. I guess, reflecting on a little bit on the Gen Z aspect. So we had spoken about, being a Gen Z leader. Obviously there's been a lot said about Gen Z. I guess from your perspective, when you think about being a Gen Z leader and some of those stereotypes, what are there things that you've had to overcome in terms of some of those stereotypes, or, once you're in the role, do people just kind of ignore that? And obviously you mentioned when you were a little bit younger, that was a little bit less now, but kind of curious from that Gen Z stereotype, if anything has been reflected.
Yeah, I think people baseline expect people within Gen Z to be more like antisocial in real life, but like more social online. I think people expect that Gen Z gets a lot of their information from social media and from online and just interacts with people in a completely different manner. I think people expect Gen Z to be a little bit more superficial in terms of relationships that are built with other people and a little bit more transactional maybe. But I don't think that actually plays out much in real time, especially not within the confines of our office. Meaning, like, I'm abnormal for Gen Z or just like human beings in general, and like I just like talk to everybody that I see anywhere. Like I've made a ton of friends on the subway since moving here, like to New York, and like I go to this like cold plunge spot, and I meet a ton of people in the cold plunge, and I'm getting messages on LinkedIn like, I met you in the cold plunge. I'm like, that's dope. I just like talking to people. When I was going to campuses, I met like tens of thousands of college students who I've been able to build great relationships with, and people who I just wanted to understand their story. Everybody from like the billionaire kid at Yale to like the person who grew up on top of a coal mine and goes to Eastern Kentucky University. I just talk to everybody, and I'm like genuinely curious about their stories. So the best way to be the stereotype about Gen Z is just to like not be that like that Gen Z-ish, like in my interactions with people. So I talk to people a lot. I'm a big believer in real life interaction. What we're building at Fizz is all about the idea that it's an offline platform where you share some sort of common experience with the people you're interacting with. We did a pilot with a big company on a campus where they wanted to get people to their store. We got 600 people to show up at their store at like noon on a random Thursday and actually build like real life connections, because you're around these people you're interacting with. You share a daily common experience with them. And I try to play that out in my real life as well as in the platform that we're building.
That's quite powerful. And you know, it's interesting because I think everything that you're just listening to you sound like an experienced CEO, someone who's seen this, a couple of startups, and you've got a couple of exits under your belt, and you have this vision. It's very clear. You get up in the morning, you know what you want to tackle. Say high with the lows and low with the highs. I think that's really, a very, very mature way of thinking about. Look, I wrote that down because I think that's a great one for people to hear. I guess when you are managing a team and you're leading a team of this type of product where your demographic is a certain type, and you're thinking about growth, you mentioned growing past colleges and universities, and you're trying to set that vision for the team. In terms of just keeping to that mantra of staying high with the lows and low with the highs, I could see people getting very excited and very easily wrapped up into, we're going to be big, but then forget to do the little things. Like, how do you as a leader make sure that people do stay grounded to that message and make sure they're just executing on that day by day?
Yeah, it's about that exactly, which is like keeping the entire team grounded. It's like we have this amazing trajectory ahead of us, this amazing path that we're on. Here are the steps that we're actually going to take to get there, both in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. How are we actually going to go make this happen? So we're all very much working together on a daily basis, meaning I work very closely with every single person on our team. And I know what everybody's working on at any given time, but don't micromanage them, because there's no good reason to do that. That will just make everybody less productive. At the end of the day, you need a self-propelling team. You need an autonomous team, a team that's going to go above and beyond, not just be executors, but be ideators, be innovators on the team. And that's what we're lucky to have here on a daily basis. And we raise alarms to one another if things aren't going well. If we're behind on something, if we know we're not executing on something ahead of an important date that's a month out, like, we're going to all tell each other. And if they're not going to tell each other, I'm going to tell the team and make sure that everybody knows we're not on the path that we need to be on to be able to get to where we need to get to. But when it comes to like going and raising a lot of money, and we've raised a lot of money or getting a lot of media attention, and we've gotten a lot of media attention, it's those moments to be like, well, the article in like some media outlet, what's that doing for us? Like, not a whole lot, but what we do on a daily basis in the office to go and execute and facilitate our next big feature that we launch, or some iteration of the product that is going to expand us to new markets, or some big go-to-market effort that's going to get us to 200 new colleges or whatever it might be. Like, those are the important moments. And if people are reminded what the important moments are, then like everything else will come as a result. As long as we are executing in here, the world is going to know. Like a pretty public company with a lot of eyes on us, and the world sees the things that we're doing and they react to the things that we're doing. So the more that we execute in here, in the office on a daily basis, the more of the fun stuff people get. Like, everybody loves to see a great article, and that's totally like chill to celebrate that. Everybody loves to see new investment coming into the company or new advertisers working with us. And we should celebrate those things. But we got to execute. So we stay focused on execution.
Fantastic. Final question. I guess as you were talking about the company, the journey, staying grounded, and obviously you yourself let somebody else come in initially, took over as CEO. Do you envision maybe there's a day if you do get big enough where you're like, you know what, I might not be the right person to lead the company past a certain point? Because you're very self-aware of you're just a very self-aware person. I was kind of curious, is that something that you'll keep an eye on, or are you in a position where you're like, you know what, I am growing and my skills are being augmented as we go through each milestone, and you'll tackle those bigger problems when you get there?
Yeah, I mean, I am right now the best person to be leading the charge. So I'm leading the charge. If we reach a point in time, a decade from now, or whenever it might be, where I'm not the best person to be leading the charge, I have no attachment to it, in the sense of like, it never since the start of the company has mattered to me whether I'm CEO or not. I only wanted to be CEO when I was the best person to be CEO. And I only continue to want to be CEO as the best person to be CEO. But as long as the magic's there, as long as like I'm feeling on a daily basis, like I'm contributing, leading the vision, leading the mission, and leading the charge in the capacity that I know I need to, then I'll be in this position. And yeah, my entire adult life has been Fizz and will continue to be Fizz. And I'm excited about the path forward. We're at an inflection point right now where it's like time to move beyond college, where we've already taken over, and go be this global Gen Z social product that we've always believed we will be. And I have a lot of intuition for the product because that's how we got started and how I've spent all of my time over the past many years. I'm very close to our users. I've been to 240 campuses across the US. I've spent a lot of time on the ground, and I have a good sense of where we need to go with the product next to get to where we need to go to, as well as continuing this. I mean, like we spend $0 on go to market, like continuing this like awesome growth trajectory that we've been on. So I just stay focused on that. And if the time comes in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it might be, then the time comes, and it's time for me to move on at that point.
Fantastic. Teddy, thanks for taking the time. If somebody does want to ask you a follow-up question on an aspect of the podcast, what's a good way of touching base?
Yeah, Teddy Solomon on LinkedIn is a great spot. You can shoot me a connection request there, shoot me a message, and I'll hopefully be able to get back to you.
All right, fantastic. I appreciate your time, and that's it for the episode. We'll be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think Teddy walked us through a couple of interesting points. We did touch on some of the Gen Z, but honestly, Teddy's a fantastic leader, and I'm going to be able to tell my grandkids one day that I had a very famous entrepreneur on who's worth a lot of money, because this sounds like a hell of a product, and he's a great leader and great story. I love everything he shared with us. So please share this episode with somebody else who might enjoy it. I'd really appreciate that. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.